Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We hopped on Friday afternoon and kind of dug into where does USC go in the transfer portal after losing their top target, former Michigan State defensive lineman Derek Harmon. You fast forward to Monday morning, a lot of really intriguing prospects emerging for USC, a couple of guys that were on campus this weekend, a couple of guys that will be on campus during the week. Want to dive into some of these targets, talk about where USC sits in this recruitment, and more importantly, talk about the potential fit that some of these guys have with this USC team. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. And many of y'all know this USC program. It's a program I love talking about. We've talked a lot about it, and the amount of support you guys have consistently shown the boys, all the fight-ons in the comment section. That stuff absolutely means the world. I can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with a really intriguing name where I got to give the USC fans in the comment sections a ton of credit on this one. You guys have been mentioning the name Bryce Foster for a really long time. Now, I kind of thought Bryce Foster leaving College Station as a starter, would he go to USC when you have Jonah kicking into that center spot? And what sounds like might be the case is Bryce Foster, certainly looking at USC, was on campus over the weekend. Let's talk about Bryce Foster first, and then talk about potentially what this USC offensive line would look like if Bryce Foster winds up playing his football for USC. Talk about Bryce Foster, former top 100 national recruit from the state of Texas, a guy that I remember breaking down when he came out of high school with really just a ton of potential. And I think where you start with Bryce Foster, a ton of power. This is a guy that is an elite track and field athlete in both the discus and the shot put. You turn on the film and you see the kind of power he has in his hands, his ability to operate in a phone booth. You look at Bryce Foster and say, it is really hard to find starting caliber offensive linemen in the transfer portal, especially in the spring transfer portal window. Bryce Foster is one of those guys, was a true freshman All-American, has started for Texas A&M in the SEC going back to his true freshman year, has played over 1,800 snaps during his career, was a true freshman All-American in 2021. Bryce Foster represents an opportunity for USC to go land a starting caliber offensive lineman in the spring transfer portal window. You don't normally get a lot of cracks at these kind of guys, and you dive into Bryce Foster. I want to talk about what this USC offensive line would potentially look like with the addition of Bryce Foster. And I think personally, Jonah probably kicks back out to tackle, because you look at this USC offensive line, and we've been consistently saying four guys on the offensive line we feel really good about, right? Elijah Page at left tackle, Emmanuel Pregnon at left guard. We felt really good about Jonah at center. We feel good about Jonah wherever he lines up on the offensive line. We felt really good about Alani Noah at the right guard spot. We had some question marks about Mason Murphy at the right tackle spot. I think Bryce Foster coming in, I would think Bryce Foster starts at center for USC. He has a ton of starting experience, has played a lot of center at Texas A&M, and you kick Jonah back out to right tackle, who Jonah at tackle is very, very good. You look back at the numbers, he's played both left tackle and right tackle. I think that is probably the best starting five for USC. You guys hear me say it all the time when we talk about high school recruits coming into USC. Position versatility is so important. This is the prime example of why it would be so important. You have the opportunity to bring in a guy like Bryce Foster, and because Jonah is so versatile and can play pretty much every position on the offensive line, you have the ability to get your best five out on the football field all playing together. Now, if Jonah didn't have that versatility, you're probably not bringing in a guy like Bryce Foster, but because he does have that versatility, he's shown the ability to play tackle and play it at a high level. You can come in, bring Bryce Foster and start him at center, and then really answer that question at the tackle spot with Jonah. And you look at the USC tackles heading into 2024, Elijah Page and Jonah, you're feeling really good about what those tackles look like. Then you look on the inside and say, hey, we got a really good starting five for USC. I'm intrigued with Bryce Foster. I'm intrigued to see what this USC offensive line would potentially look like with the addition of Bryce Foster. Would love to hear your guys' input in the comment section. Does Jonah stay at center? Does he kick back out to tackle? I'm personally in the camp that if Bryce Foster comes to USC, would love to see Jonah go back out to tackle because he's shown he can play it at a high level. But more importantly, the game of college football is all about getting your best players on the field. You have just an offensive weapon in Jonah who can play all over the offensive line. Use him like that. And again, at the very least, you're adding a really good depth piece in Bryce Foster, who potentially would be a depth piece for USC with 3 years of starting experience in the SEC. Now, excuse me, I think more importantly for USC fans, y'all want to talk about the inside of the defensive line. We talked about 6 or 7 defensive linemen for USC to potentially go after Friday afternoon. We're getting our answers on the guys that USC will be pursuing in the portal. First one up, Brandon Lane will be on campus, I believe, on Tuesday. You'll look at Brandon Lane coming up from SF Austin. This is a guy with a plethora of Power 5 offers, was committed to Michigan State. Something didn't work out with Michigan State. He ends up opening back up his recruitment. This is the kind of body USC wanted. And we had that discussion where you had a really lucrative package to get Derek Harmon to come to USC. And what did we say? How can USC pivot? All right, let's split that package into maybe 2 or 3 sections and start handing it out to a couple other defensive linemen. A lot of you guys in the comment section were saying we need depth on the defensive line just as much as we need talent. You could potentially get Brandon Lane probably for a third of the resources that it would take to get Derek Harmon into this USC program. And you look at Brandon Lane, where he excels in the run game. This is a guy at 6'3", 300 pounds, that fire hydrant kind of build, takes on double teams extremely well. I haven't seen a ton of Brandon Lane on the football field. I'll be the first one to admit it. Don't watch a lot of SF Austin in the falls. I do trust that almost every Power 5 program across the country wants Brandon Lane. He must be a pretty good, damn good interior defensive lineman. And the other name that I think is really intriguing for USC and another highly coveted prospect in the portal is former Division II from Grand Valley State, Javier Suggs. The offer list, absolutely loaded. He's taken visits to Florida State. He's taken visits to Arkansas. He was on USC's campus last weekend. He seemed to really like it from the Instagram stories. Even Michigan has offered a guy like Suggs, who has a very good interior defensive line. What does that tell you about a guy like Javier Suggs? Is they really like him. And a lot of Power 5 programs really do like him. And again, I think it's a very similar circumstance where, all right, we could have had Derek Harmon and he brought him in. We would have been really happy with that. I think we'd be equally happy if you split up those resources and said, all right, let's go bring in Suggs and Brandon Lane on that defensive line. You suddenly look at it and say, all right, Suggs, Lane, Bear Alexander, you sprinkle in a couple of the young cats that we're excited about, and you're kind of feeling a little bit better about what the inside of that defensive line could look like for USC. We've said it all the time. If USC figures out the inside of this defensive line, we have a lot of optimism that this defense takes some massive steps in the right direction in 2024. We'll see if they can get it done. I'm going to, for you guys, try to get some film in on Suggs and Brandon Lane. It's hard to find that type of stuff. I don't watch a ton of Grand Valley State. He is from Michigan, so I'll try to do some research for you guys. And if they do end up committing to USC, we'll break it down. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.